Section 10.3 is on data distributions. The main four, mean, median, mode, and range, these are things that are covered on ACTs and SATs. Now, I know my own children started learning this in 3rd grade. I know my daughter brought home a thing with all the little songs, and they want you to sing them so you memorize what each one means. If you need to sing yourself a song to know the difference of them, go ahead and sing yourself a song. I will not be singing for you. These are most likely found on ACTs and SATs. This is where this information is used. We have the mean, which is the average of the data values. The median, which is the middle value when the values are put in numerical order. For your median, you list your values least to greatest. It always goes from least to greatest because that's what numerical order would be. And you pick the middle value. If there is an even number of values, then you have to take the average of the two middle ones. It means you just add them together and you simply divide by 2 to get the median. That could end up being, a fraction or a decimal if that ends up being whatever your data ends up being. Next is the mode. The mode is the value or values that occur most often. That's usually the easiest one to do. You can basically eyeball that one. If every number is only listed one time, there is no mode. If there can be more than one mode, and that is if multiple values are used more than once and the same amount of times that they're being used. Lastly, the range is the difference between the greatest and the least values. It has to be the greatest minus the least because we're not going to have a negative range. There's no such thing as that. And you are just simply subtracting the two. The one you're most used to is probably going to be the mean. That's the average, just being what your average in any one of your classes at any given time. That is your average, and it's the average of all the data. We usually just say, oh, what's my class average? What's my grade point average? Anything like that. We don't really use the word mean. However, out in the real world, they do use mean. Now, in the first type of problem, you're just basically finding the mean, median, mode, and range of the data. In this first problem, it says the number of hours Fred did homework on 6 days are 3, 8, 4, 6, 5, and 4. Find the mean, median, mode, and range of the data set. So first, to find the mean, you are finding the average. You're going to add up 3, 8, 4, 6, 5, and 4. And when you do that, you get 30. Divide that by 6, and we get 5 as the mean. Now, it is possible that you could end up with a decimal, and that's fine. If you end up with a decimal, then that's what your mean is going to be. Right now, don't get hung up on whether or not what you should round to or anything like that. You can just basically stick to the hundredths place, make it look like money. Even if, regardless of what they're talking about, just go ahead and do that. We don't need to worry about rounding up, rounding down, and all that stuff. If this was a real world problem, they would have to be very specific about where they want you to round your answer. All right, next for median, you have to list your numbers in order from least to greatest. So I did that. 3, 4, 4, 5, 6, 8. Now, the median is going to be the middle number, but this is one of those circumstances I was just mentioning where you have an even number of values. So what you have to do is you have to take these two and find the average of those two. So 4 plus 5 is 9, divided by 2 is 4.5. If you want to write your answer as 9 over 2, you can. Usually these go to the decimals, though. Now, mode, the numbers that are repeated most often or used more often. This one you can eyeball. I can look at the green right above that I wrote the median, and the number 4, that one is used 2 times. The rest are only used 1 time. So this one only has 1 mode. Now my range, the highest number is 8, the lowest number is 3. 8 minus 3 is 5. So there is my mean, median, mode, and range. Let's try another one. The weight in pounds of 5 cats are 12, 14, 12, 16, and 16. Find the mean, median, mode, and range of the data set. All right, so for the mean, I'm going to add 12 plus 14 plus 12 plus 16 plus 16. And then I'm going to divide that all by, there are 5 numbers that I'm going to divide that by. So that's too much math for me to have to think about, so I'm going to use my calculator and add up those 5 numbers, and when I add up those 5 numbers, I get 215. 215 then divided by 5 is 43, which is not right. What did I do wrong? Oh, that's why. It's not 215. I multiplied. My fat fingers slipped and touched a multiplication sign. Much better. Notice 43 is way off. How could that possibly be an average when they're all way under 43? So, I caught my mistake, and 70 divided by 5 is 14, which makes a lot more sense. Okay, next is my median. I'm going to list these in order from least to greatest. I've got 12, 12, 14, 16, and 16. There is an odd number here, so I can just take the middle number. I don't have to worry about finding the average because there is a distinct middle term here. Next, mode. What numbers are used more often? And both 12 and 16 are used more than once, and they are they're both going to be the mode. Now, you do not find the average of 12 and 16. You're just listing this particular problem has two modes, and that's 12 and 16. Now, my range. My highest number is 16. My lowest number is 12, so my range is 4. Now, we're going to talk about something called an outlier. An outlier is something that is way, way off base. It's completely different from the other values in the data set. That would be like if I was giving a quiz and everybody, scored B's, and then all of a sudden I have one person who got a 0 because maybe they cheated or something like that. In that circumstance, that person that got the 0 would be the outlier when everyone else performed very well, and then you've got the one person that didn't do well. That would be an outlier. They're way far away from everyone else. So in this first problem, it says identify the outlier in the data set and determine how the outlier affects the mean, median, mode, and range. All right, so the outlier you should be able to identify is 54. The rest are all well under 15. 54 is the number that is way above the rest. So now what I have to do is I have to calculate the mean, median, mode, and range with the outlier, and then I'm going to pretend like the outlier is not there. And forgot my L over there. Okay, so in this first problem, with the outlier, you are going to add all of the numbers. I've got 7 plus 10 plus 54 plus 9 plus 12 plus 8 plus 5, and I am going to divide all of that by 7. When I do that, I am going to get, you can type it all on your calculator at one time, but maybe do it 2 times just so you don't make the same mistake I made on the problem above if your finger slips and you type in something wrong. So this one, my mean is 15. Next, I'll write them in order from least to greatest for my median. 5, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, and 54. I have an odd number of values, therefore I can just simply take the middle number, which would be 9. Everybody was listed only one time, so there is no mode. And my range, the highest number is 54, the lowest number is 5, so that gives me a range of 49. All right, now for without the outlier, you're going to add every number but that 54, and this time you are going to divide by 6 because you're not using that 7th number. And this, when you type it all in your calculator, you get 8.5. Now my median, I have 5, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12. I have an even number, so I have to take the 2 middle values, 8 and 9, and find their average. So that would be 8 plus 9 divided by 2, which gives me 8.5. Now, once again, there's no mode, so nothing happened there. And lastly, your range. The highest number is 12, the lowest number is 5. This gives you if I was going to quiz you on this, or they may just ask you questions from there, like, well, what happened to the mean? Well, if I use the outlier, it's 15 versus 8.5, so it's much greater if you were to use the outlier. Your median, my median score, those two are really close. 8.5 and 9, there's not much of a difference. Mode, there's no difference. And range, there is a very, very large difference between those. So you would just basically say that basically in this circumstance, the outlier caused everything to be greater. It caused the mean to be greater, the median, and the range all to be greater values with it. If the outlier happens to be much less than the other values, then it's going to bring everything down. So like my example of the students in the class, let's say but everybody got A's and B's, and then I have one person that got a 0, that's going to drag down the class average. I dislike telling class averages because there's always going to be those outliers. That person that just had a bad test day, didn't study, forgot there was even a quiz. And when you average that in, it doesn't give an accurate assessment of what actually happened on a quiz or a test. So I like to actually get rid of, I'm somebody who I would like to figure out the average without those outliers. So if the outlier is less, it brings everything down. If it is more in this circumstance, it's going to increase everything. So let's try another one. 21, 24, 3, 27, 30, and 24. So we'll say with and without the outlier. Okay. First of all, identify the outlier, and that would be the number 3. So I have 21 plus 24 plus 3 plus 27 plus 30 plus 24, and I am going to divide that by 6. So my mean, I'm going to try and be careful with my calculator this time. So plus, it's 129 divided by 6 gives me 21.5. Without the outlier, 21 plus 24 plus 27 plus 30 plus 24, and I'm going to divide that by 5. And that gives me 25.2. So in this case, because the outlier was much less than the rest of the values, the mean was lower with the outlier. Next, for my median, I'm going to list these: 3, 21, 24, 24, 27, and 30. So there's an even number, so I have to take the two middle numbers, but actually the two middle numbers are both the same thing, so I don't need to go about doing that. So my median with the outlier is 24. Over here, notice there's not going to be any change here. I'm just going to drop off the number 3, and this one, it is just the middle number, which, so including that didn't make that much of a difference when it came to the median. The mode, there was no effect on the mode because the mode stays the same. The outlier was not repeated, so your mode is 24 in both circumstances. Now your range is going to be changed because that number is going to be much bigger with this. So I get a range of 27 for with the outlier, and without, I have a range of 9. All right, so overall, the mean was increased without. The median stayed the same, the mode stayed the same, but the range was much larger with the outlier. Now we're going to talk about something about central tendency. We're not going to get too crazy and do all kinds of box and whisker plots and all kinds of stuff with central tendency, but this is rather interesting because when your parents may ask you, well, what's your average in algebra? Well, you could be a little sneaky about that, and maybe you want to give them the median or the mode instead. It might be a little bit higher than what the rest of the class had, or depending on what it ended up being. So in this first one, it says Niles scored 70, 74, 72, 71, 73, and a 96 on his 6 geography tests. For each question, choose the mean, median, or mode and give its value. You're not finding all 4 of those things. You want to figure out which one are they asking for or which one would be best. So in letter A, it says which measure gives Niles' test average. So it'd be your job to realize, well, average would mean that they are looking for the mean value. So you would take those 6 values and find the mean. That gives him 76. So Niles has a 76% in geography. Next, it says which measure best describes Niles' typical score. Explain. Well, the outlier of a 96 causes the mean to be greater than all but one of the test scores. So it is not the best measure in this situation for you to use discussing the outlier. There's no mode in the fact. In this circumstance, and his average would be a 76. They want to know basically what is the most like honest, or what is his typical score? What kind of grades are you typically getting in this class? And he's typically looks like he's getting a C pretty consistently. Yeah, he had a great 96 at the end, but he's typically in the C range. So giving the mean is a little false sense because none of those grades are C pluses. By saying a 76. If you give the median of a 72.5 or even saying 72 or 73 is a much better honest opinion of what his scores are, what his typical scores are going to be. You do have to put 72.5. You can't put 72 or 73, but that's what I use to solve for that because his grades are more like C's. Not this one is a C plus. That's not really typical of him. He's not scoring C pluses on these, nor is he scoring an A with that 96. So the 72.5, this is the best value, and that's the median to describe his typical score. So let's try another one. Now we got Josh, who scored a 75, 75, 81, 84, and 85 on 5 tests. For each question, choose the mean, median, or mode to give its value. All right, so which measure describes the score Josh received most often? You would have to realize, well, they're asking you for the mode. So which one did he earn more often? And that would be a 75. Next, it says which measure should Josh use to convince his parents that he is doing well in school? And then we're going to explain why that one would be the best. So in order to do that, I got the mode. I'm going to find the mean and see what it's at. 75 plus 75 plus 81 plus 84 plus 85, and I'm going to divide that by 5. So let's see what we get here. It's 400 divided by 5, which would give me an 80. Now, that's obviously the mean right now is better than the mode. Of course, you'd want to tell your parents you have an 80 instead of a 75. So right away, the mean is the better one out of those two. Now let's check the median score. We've got, and actually they're already written in numerical order for me. Oh, nice. Okay, my middle number is an 81. So right there, the score that Josh wants to tell his parents is an 81 because that is greater than both the mean and the mode. So an 81, he wants to tell the median score and he'd say that it's an 81. That would be his best choice. Now, you are going to go complete page 706, 2 through 9 only, and you're going to do all of them before returning to Zoom. Again, there's more to this section, but these 3 examples, that are 2 examples I showed you, are the only types that we are going to do. We're not going to do any of the other stuff. They have quartile range. They go into box and whisker plots. We're not doing that. We are just doing these 3 types of questions. So go practice 2 through 9, and I'll see you in Zoom in a little bit.